cover, we changed a whole bunch of things. I showed you guys how to do comparators using the equals equal. Wait, where are they? I saved them up here. So these are the comparators. Hopefully you can remember those. The if statements we went over. Let's go over loops. You know what, we may not need loops. We're gonna need special loops, and we'll learn those a little later. For now, let's go into, let's see, variables. I think arrays would be nice. You're not gonna see you're not gonna see a ton of arrays, but arrays are extremely useful. So there's no reason not to use them or not to know them. So basically an array is just a variable. So it's basically a variable, nothing different about that. What makes them unique is that they are numbered. So a variable with the number 1 followed by it would be this. So this would be variable 1, and that equals 200. So variable 2 would be equals 300. So you could have a whole bunch of different information, and it's basically like putting a number after the variable. It's a special way of keeping track of information, or like a list of information even. So let's actually change this to like a grocery list. Bread, eggs, 3 equals milk. So first though, one thing about arrays is that they need to be saved as, or they need to be, when they're initialized, they need to be recognized as such. So before I can even do this, I need to be able to, or I need to do this first. So before I can create, I have to like tell the game, or tell the coding that this variable is going to be an array, and I do that by typing this little guy. So equals and then this bracket. So variable equals bracket, open bracket, close bracket. So that tells us it's going to be an array, and then I can start doing things like this. Both 4 equals choose, etc. So we have these 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like a list basically, and each list, part of the list, has a number. And the reason why we wouldn't just do var 1 equals bread, which is because the arrays have special unique things that you can do to them. You can do things to arrays that you can't do to just separate variables. This turns them into a list and clumps them all together. And now we can do things like var dot sort. So this would sort them all by their values, and it would change them all to be a different list. We can also do so it would basically, the list would be laid out a little differently. And it might change. It would take variable 4 cheese and put it here in variable 1. So these would basically be switched around like this. See? So it would turn into something like this after it sorts, and it's still saved as 1. Cheese is still in 1. Bread is still in, is now in, or cheese isn't now in 1. Bread is now in 4, and it's nice because if we had some sorting function for like variable 1, 2, 3, etc., it would still keep the names, and the sorting wouldn't be really that great. But this way, the sorting for this list is fantastic. So we have a variable sorted in an array, or sorry, we have an array sorted very well. Thanks to the power of an array, the sorting feature is great. We can also do variable dot, I can't remember, I usually have to look these up sometimes, but like trunctuate, which I believe knocks off the last part of the list. So the variable, the list or array after this would look like this. It would chop off that 4. So there's a bunch of reasons to do that. Like, let's say actors. We have, let's see, variable 1 is John, variable 2 is Sam, and variable 3 is Toby. So you could have a list of actors, which actually, now that I think about it, why don't we show you an example? Right here is a set. This right here is an array. It's a list of actors, and your party members are the ones that are saved over here. So your initial party's there, and anything past the limit of 4 is ignored, so it sort of chops it off. So after this, it starts chopping them off. You can't really get to these guys in the parties. So those are an array, and it helps by chopping it off, and it can also reorganize it, and we can change. Maybe John, instead of being in front, will be replaced by Toby, and the order will still be 1, 2, 3. So whenever we need to reference the first person in a party, we would always just do variable 1, and so that is always the party leader. So that's useful. You can see the use there. And checking the chat, nothing new. Anyways, yeah. So that's kind of how it is. Arrays, that's pretty much an array. They're very useful. They can be put into loops as well. And the, let's see, I think it's, shoot, I don't remember the dot function, the function. Yeah, that's what these, yeah, that's what these are. These are functions? No, not quite. If I told a programmer that, they'd probably be mad because these aren't functions. They're methods. That's what they are, methods. Yeah, so these are methods. The def, they're methods, and yeah. Okay, so let me think of the next thing. So you guys learned arrays now. Arrays are very useful. You can do a whole bunch of things or lists of information. They're very useful because you can sort them. You can chop off parts of them, and you can also loop through them, which was one of the things I wanted to talk about. So if I have a list of information, I can loop through trying to find to see if certain information exists, or to change something different about each one. So let's say variable dot, let's say, yeah, I did all the, you know what? Let's get back there. So let's say I did this, and I have all these. So let's say I want to do something to the names of that I'm saving in here. So I would do, hold on, I need to remember. They do a few of them in here. I need to find out what the terminology or the syntax is in order to do what I want to do. Let's go ahead and look it up. So you're gonna have to look it up quite often. Iterate through an array in Ruby. So you're gonna have to do this often. So it's good to do. It's unlikely you're gonna remember all the dot times. That's it, dot times. It's very unlikely you're going to remember how to do all the syntax for every language. So every now and then you may have to refresh your memory and go through either through a book or a website. The internet is full of awesome information. So knowing what it can do will help you be able to look that information up quicker. So variable dot times. So this is the array, and variable dot times. Here, I might still need this then for the correct syntax for it. Dot each, actually. Yeah, dot times is actually a little different. Dot times is the, you would go through each array, or the array a certain number, or not the whole array, each variable up to a number of times. So in this one, we want each. So this will go through the entire array. So we start at dot each, and then we add a, it's called a curly brace, or a curly bracket. Some people call it that, or brace. Either way, I call it a brace. So open brace, followed by a variable name. So in this case, the variable name would be grocery item. So you can choose any name. I could even put an I or a T here, but in this case, to make it more clear what we're using, it's going to be grocery item. Follow that with a line of code, and then we end it with a brace. So let's say I want to add E to the end of each one. Yep, I'm good. So we would do grocery item plus equals E. I should do it if I'm not mistaken. So this will add E to the end of all of these. So variable.each, we use a brace, an opening brace, followed by the name of the variable. So the name of the variable is going to be, every time it goes through, it's going to take this and it's going to make it into this. So as we go through the first one, it's going to be grocery item. So it would do this to the first list. How best to explain this to you guys? Basically, it's going to go through each one. And we want to manipulate this entry, each of these entries. In order to do that, these entries need to be saved as a variable. So the first time it goes through, it's going to go save variable 1 to grocery item. The second time, or the second one, it's going to save variable 2 to grocery item. And every time it does that, it's going to go and take that, since grocery items are variable 2 saved to grocery item, it's going to add an E to the end of variable 2. And then for variable 3, it's going to be milk, and it's going to add an E to the end of milk. And then variable 4, it's going to be saved as grocery item, and it's going to add an E to the end of that. So that's sort of how that works. It's going to go through it like that. And so at the end, the result will be cheese E, variable 2 equals eggs E, etc. So at the end result after doing this code is that these are all going to have E added to them. So they're going to look a little different. So that's how we do the loop, or go through each item in a array. So if we had an array of stats, which I believe is the case somewhere around here. So all the stats of an actor are saved as variables in an array, if I'm not mistaken. And if we were to go through that array and add 1 to each one, then, well, we'd basically add 1 to each one. But yeah, we'd be able to do that very quickly instead of having to do something like variable 1 plus equals E, and then variable 2 plus equals E. We wouldn't have to do something crazy like that, which may, if there's 100 items in an array, would be murder. Not to mention if something is added to the list, yeah, even worse. So that would be another thing we can do with an array. Variable add, I think. Meat. So we could add the variable meat, and now it would be variable 5 equals meat. It'd basically be variable 5 would now be meat. So that's useful. Now you know that. There's a bunch of different things we can do with arrays. So it's good to go through and research arrays and what they can do. There was a awesome site list of array, something like that. class. Here it is, ruby.org. This.